I never thought I'd say this, but last night I couldn't wait for The View to come on, and I wasn't disappointed at seeing the total meltdown the panel had in response to Donald Trump's massive presidential win on November 5th. But as much as you'd like to rub this victory in their face, let's do something else as well, because there's some desperate rationalizations that Sonny Hostin and Whoopi Goldberg make that make zero sense as usual for why the Democrats lost. Watch this before we dive in.
I'm profoundly disturbed. I think if you look at the New York Times this morning, the headline was America makes a perilous choice. I think that in 2016, we didn't know what we would get from a Trump administration, but we know now. And we know now that he will have almost unfettered power. And so I worry, not about myself, actually. I don't worry about my station in life. I worry about the working class. I worry about my mother, a retired teacher. I worry about our elderly and their Social Security and their Medicare. I worry about my children's future, especially my daughter, who now has less rights than I have. And I remember my father telling me many, many years ago that I was the first person in his family to enjoy full civil rights. And now I have less civil rights than I had when he told me that. So again, I'm profoundly disturbed that the 14th Amendment of the Constitution did not prevent someone who participated in an insurrection from becoming president of the United States. I think that going forward, the convicted felon box on employment applications better be taken off, because if you can be the president of the United States, then you should not be prevented from employment in this country, because I remember applying for my jobs as a federal prosecutor, and there was a box for convicted felons. And so that box better be taken off.
What? I remember once Joe Rogan calling Sonny Hostin the only intelligent panelist on The View. I think it's time he took that back. And what civil rights is she even talking about? Abortion? That's not a civil right according to the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, but a negotiated social and political issue. Those two are not the same thing. In fact, if anything, perhaps Sonny Hostin should be relieved at the fact that someone like Donald Trump has quietly taken the abortion issue to the sideline of the Republican policy table, even if he's done it for his own selfish political and electoral reasons. By the way, this is a great time to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because with a new post-election America, you can't miss the content we've got lined up for you. But The View is just the start of this echo chamber of a show, and you can gauge that by how it was basically a trending meme in online circles right after Trump's victory speech, with people waiting to hear from platforms like The View and the Young Turks. Even Elon Musk couldn't help but laugh when Candace Owens asked, quote, "I've never wanted to watch The View more in my entire life. When does it come on?" But you've seen nothing if you haven't seen Whoopi Goldberg barely holding herself back from imploding live on air over the sheer scale of the loss for the Democratic Party, while making up some fine rationalizations.
We said to people, vote. We didn't tell people who to vote for.
Right.
We just said go out. Well, yes, but I did not.
Yeah, I did.
Because I wanted to make sure people exercise that right. Too many people that I know died trying to vote.
Yeah, right.
Okay? So we start with that. And think about this. She did this in 2 months.
Yeah, no.
She did this in 2 months.
She left it all on the field.
Yes, she did. She, you know, everybody can always say, oh, she should have done this, she should have done this, She did what she did. She was everywhere. She talked to everybody. And people didn't come out. I don't know why, and it doesn't even matter. He's now the president. I'm still not going to say his name. That's not going to change. Yeah.
That is so petty, and trust me, no one is entertained by these antics anymore. And honestly, I think this is a perfect snapshot of the entire reason the Democratic Party lost so heavily to begin with. It's the lack of accountability. No Whoopi, Kamala Harris wasn't everywhere. At the best, she did a few short and rehearsed softball interviews, but as they say, you still have to hit a softball, and she didn't. Did you hear anything critical of Joe Biden's stubborn insistence at retaining the party ticket until the last few months? Or did you hear a critique of the party establishment for basically doing away with the Democratic norms of primaries, convention, and a nomination? No, the entire blame is on the people for not coming out to vote as if they're entitled to it. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, and the current Democratic establishment seems to have gone insane by that standard, because the strategy for making a negative case against Donald Trump rather than a positive case for Kamala Harris failed spectacularly. And you know what? I don't even think it's possible to make an actual positive and assertive case in favor of Kamala Harris, Because there's just nothing there. She's a giant nothing burger, and the electorate saw straight through it. At times you saw her at rallies trying and failing to get a Barack Obama moment, getting the crowd riled up, but at least Barack Obama had substance and could speak to crowds without a teleprompter or script. And it is kind of sad when even someone who at least comes off as relatively smarter on the panel like Sunny Hostin would devolve into the same kind of blame game rather than genuine introspection.
And I think our healthcare system is now at risk. I think
no fluoride for anyone.
Yeah, economists have made clear that he's going to increase the debt by $7.75 trillion. I'm worried about mass deportation and internment camps, and I'm also worried about Elon Musk warning Americans to prepare for temporary hardship. I'm surprised at the result, but I'm not surprised. As a woman of color, I was so hopeful that a mixed-race woman married to a Jewish guy could be elected president of this country. Mm-hmm. And I think that it had nothing to do with policy. I think this was a referendum of cultural resentment in this country.
Again, no lessons learned. Kamala Harris's loss had virtually nothing to do with her skin color or race, and I don't know when the modern left is going to realize that its obsession with identity is only shooting itself in the foot. Do you think if the Republicans ran someone like Tulsi Gabbard for president against Joe Biden, that the conservative base wouldn't vote for her just because she's a woman of color? Of course not, because Tulsi actually has substance and a list of accomplishments to her name. And by the way, it's interesting that Sunny mentioned Elon Musk here because I've seen much of the liberal media after the election make him a new main target for their attacks. That's because his support for Donald Trump in this entire election has proved to tip him over the edge in more ways than you can count, which is perhaps why someone like Sarah Haynes would love to regulate it.
One of the biggest offenders is DC and Congress have not been able to do one thing in regard to the rogue corporations of social media.
It's not going to get any better with Elon Musk now in the administration. I want to end by thanking Joe Biden.
It's like they're not hiding it anymore. After giving themselves the moral license to label X a rogue platform, much of the left-wing media, including some business analysts back in 2022, were criticizing Musk's acquisition of Twitter as a bad financial move, but he was looking much farther ahead than they thought. That's because X in the last year has proven to be the most important platform for the Republican Party and the conservative voter base to be able to speak and organize without being completely censored from either the MSM or the social media giants. And that's of course after even Donald Trump was allowed back on the platform. And I think after the war against the mainstream media that Donald Trump waged from 2016, this is the first time that they've officially lost the power to shape political narratives forever. And it's that frustration that you see constantly reflected in The View, which is easier to see through Joy Behar here, even though she's trying hard to play it off.
So, how you feel?
I'll start.
Yeah, go ahead.
My takeaway is that the system works. We live in a democracy. Mm-hmm. People spoke. This is what people wanted. I vehemently disagree with the decision that Americans made, but I feel very, very hopeful that we have a democratic system in this country. We should value it. We should love it. We should protest if the situation arises that we need to protest, which I'm sure it will. And I've been through this before with Nixon. It's been very difficult. But boy, oh boy, do we have a country if we can keep it.
Yeah.
And here's what's interesting. This is only the beginning of another 4 years that no one at The View can even take a second of. That means we're only going to see more desperate attempts at retaining their dwindling audience, leading to more entertaining meltdowns for us to cover. Also, Joy Behar has been really paranoid in the last few months that Donald Trump is president, would think that she's important enough to take off the air for criticizing him. Let's see if that happens as well. But until then, tell me in the comments what you think as America enters a unique political phase in a volatile global environment. Share this with your friends. Thanks for watching.